War in ancient Rome was more than just a clash of spears, swords, and shields. It was a game of military intelligence. Sieges, in particular, revealed how far the Romans were willing to go beyond sheer brutality to achieve their goals. Unlike open field battles, attacking a fortified city required something far more sophisticated: planning, patience, and engineering. The mere thought of facing thick stone walls, defended by archers and ballistae perched high above, made any frontal assault nearly suicidal. It was in this context that the need arose for specialized machines capable of shielding legionaries as they advanced under enemy fire. Imagine an entire army standing still before the gates of a city, unable to move forward due to a relentless rain of arrows and flaming projectiles hurled from atop the walls. Time was working against the Romans. Every day under siege cost them resources, soldiers, and morale. And it was in this stalemate that Roman ingenuity shone brightest. To overcome stubborn cities, they began to develop mobile, fortified structures that enabled not only safe approach, but also the construction of ramps and roads under constant attack. Thus emerged one of the most ingenious and least known inventions in Roman military history: the musculus. The musculus was not just any invention. It was the direct result of experience accumulated over generations of Roman generals. It wasn't just about brute strength. It was about strategy calculated down to the last detail. And the most impressive thing is that this silent weapon, which crept like a rat through the wreckage of war, would become a fundamental piece in the empire's most challenging campaigns. The name musculus might sound strange at first, and that's precisely what makes it so fascinating. In Latin, the word musculus carries a double layer of meaning. Literally, it means little mouse, but it's also the root of the word muscle, as we know it today. This name wasn't chosen by accident. The Romans, masters of symbolic language, gave this war machine a term that evoked both physical strength and stealthy movement. After all, the musculus would slide slowly, protected, close to the ground, like a small mouse trying to sneak past the eyes of its predators. It approached the enemy walls without fanfare, but with a lethal mission. This analogy between the machine and a silent, persistent mouse may have come directly from the way it moved. Built of wood, covered with a fire-resistant roof, and pulled by soldiers from within, it crept along the dirt roads that the legionaries themselves constructed toward enemy fortifications. From afar, to defenders watching from atop the walls, it may have looked like a kind of mechanical creature, crawling forward with patience and deadly intent. And it's precisely this ambiguous image, a mouse or a muscle, that earned the musculus its place among the most mysterious and symbolic inventions of Roman military engineering. But the name, as curious as it may be, is just the surface. The true impact of the musculus is revealed when we dive into its inner structure, the materials used, and the brilliant strategic design behind its creation. That's exactly what we're going to explore next. Built with the precision of an architect and the aggression of a warrior, the musculus was far more than just a simple wooden covering. It was a true miniature mobile fortress. Its structure began with a sturdy rectangular base, typically made from thick hardwood planks, reinforced with diagonal beams to ensure stability. The roof was sloped, forming an inverted triangle designed to deflect arrows and stones hurled from above. But the musculus's greatest secret lay in its outer layer. It was covered with soaked animal hides or metal plates to resist fire, since one of the main methods of defense during sieges was to set enemy siege machines ablaze. Inside, soldiers worked almost like construction workers within a shelter. It was there that the most dangerous siege tasks took place: digging trenches, leveling the ground, and most importantly, building ramps and roads that led the siege towers to the base of the walls. The musculus allowed these operations to be carried out under total protection, even while projectiles rained down across the battlefield. As for size, records like those of Julius Caesar suggest that the musculus was over 2 meters long, enough to shelter several legionaries side by side inside, like a team of armored engineers. While the model described by Caesar was more elongated, smaller and adapted versions were used in different regions and campaigns, showing that this wasn't a static invention, but rather an evolving military concept. Visually, If we were to recreate the musculus in a realistic animation today, it would resemble a cross between a portable bunker and a covered medieval tractor, something between a military shelter and an invasion tool. It didn't shoot, it didn't crush, it didn't destroy directly, but it paved the way for destruction. And that was its genius. On the battlefield, the musculus was not merely a passive structure. It was part of a meticulously choreographed military strategy devised by Roman engineers. Its role went far beyond protection. It opened the way. During a siege, the Romans rarely attacked a city's walls directly or without preparation. Instead, they used the musculus in the preliminary phase, the construction of internal roads and approach ramps, which allowed other massive machines, like the siege towers to zambulatori, to reach the base of the enemy walls. These roads, known as agger, were essential to ensure the heavy siege structures could advance with stability. But building such pathways under enemy fire was nearly a suicidal task, unless they had the protective cover of the musculus. Inside it, dozens of soldiers worked digging, leveling, clearing obstacles, and preparing the terrain for the final invasion. With a sloped roof to deflect arrows and fire-resistant materials covering the wood, the enemy could try whatever they wanted. But the Romans kept advancing, protected as if inside a living shell. And most impressively, the musculus could be moved. Its operators, experienced soldiers, used levers and coordinated pushes to shift it a few meters at a time, always inching closer to the target. This calculated slowness gave the impression of a tactical creature creeping beneath the walls, silent yet threatening. It was an invisible attack, but a relentless one. And so, with no haste and no fanfare, the Romans steadily closed the distance between their forces and the heart of the enemy city, until the moment of impact. In the end, the musculus was not just a machine. It was part of a strategy that combined engineering, patience, and precision, where each step forward, no matter how small, brought Rome closer to victory. To understand the true significance of the musculus, it's impossible to ignore the voices that come directly from ancient Rome. Two historical sources stand out in this context: Vegetius, author of De Re Militari, and none other than Julius Caesar himself, the emperor and military commander who recorded his campaigns in vivid detail in commentaries on the Civil War. Both mention the musculus explicitly, revealing that this machine was not just a local or temporary invention. It was a recognized, documented, and essential tool within the Roman war apparatus. Vegetius, for instance, describes the musculus as indispensable in the most complex sieges. He details its function as a mobile shelter for field engineers, emphasizing that its existence allowed legionaries to prepare the terrain even under a rain of projectiles, something unthinkable without protection. Caesar, with his sharp eye as both strategist and leader, mentions that the machine measured over 2 meters in length, helping us visualize its imposing presence on the battlefield, almost like a small moving wall. The mere fact that these sources took the time to mention the musculus speaks volumes. In an era when so many weapons, machines, and formations went undocumented or were lost to time, the musculus survived in the words of those who lived the war. This not only validates its existence, but reinforces its strategic importance. After all, if Caesar used it, it worked. If Vegetius taught it, it was worth continuing. These records don't just legitimize the machine, they elevate the musculus to a symbol of Roman military intelligence, a tangible piece of a war system that was calculated down to the last detail. And through these ancient voices, the musculus ceases to be a forgotten curiosity and becomes a character in history. When we compare the musculus to modern war machines, the similarity is striking, almost unsettling. Centuries before the rise of armored tanks in World War I, the Romans were already experimenting with the idea of protected mobility on the battlefield. Of course, the musculus had no engines or cannons, but it served the same strategic purpose, allowing troops to advance under cover while the enemy threw everything they had to stop them. It was the conceptual grandfather of modern tanks. Its sturdy structure, reinforced with fire-resistant materials, had a very clear mission: to withstand direct attacks, protect those inside, and inch forward toward the target, even under constant fire. The fact that it was used as a mobile shelter for building ramps and roads, often while arrows or flaming projectiles rained down, shows that the Romans understood perfectly the value of engineering applied to tactical protection. This mindset anticipated, in essence, the core principles of today's armored vehicles: protection, mobility, and offensive support. Today, when we see a modern tank crossing rugged terrain while shielding soldiers within, it's impossible not to picture the musculus creeping across the battered ground, sliding forward like an armored rat, heading straight for the enemy walls. And it's exactly this connection between past and present that makes the musculus one of the most fascinating inventions in military history. It didn't just play its role in ancient battles. It planted the seed of mechanized warfare, millennia before it became reality. That's why, when we revisit the musculus, we're not just talking about a Roman machine. We're looking at the origin of an idea that would go on to shape the future of armed conflict. And perhaps, more than any other legacy, this is the true power behind that ingenious creation, forgotten by most, but immortalized by those who truly understand what strategy is all about. If you are amazed by the genius behind the musculus, just imagine what other secrets the Romans left buried in the shadows of history. On this channel, every video uncovers a story that most books never tell. So if you're passionate about historical discoveries, ancient warfare, and the brilliant minds behind the world's greatest empires, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell, because the next machine we reveal might surprise you even more. You won't want to miss what's coming next.